Hello and welcome. Today, we're diving deep into a fascinating and incredibly personal topic, organ donation within Islamic law. This is where faith, modern medicine, and the very definition of life all intersect. And really, it all boils down to one single fundamental question. And here it is. This is the question at the very heart of this entire debate. It's the philosophical starting point for Islamic scholars, and honestly, how you answer this pretty much frames everything else that follows. It forces us to think, what is our real relationship with our own bodies?
Okay, so let's start with the argument against donation. Now, it's really important to understand that this viewpoint doesn't come from a place of being cold or unfeeling, not at all. It's actually rooted in a profound sense of reverence for the human body as a sacred creation from God.
This perspective really hinges on that crucial distinction between being a guardian and being an owner. Think about it. If your body is a divine trust, something given to you just for safekeeping, then you don't actually have the ultimate authority to give away its parts. From this point of view, the act isn't seen as a gift, but as a violation of that sacred trust.
So this perspective is built on a few key pillars. First up, God's ultimate ownership. Simple as that. Second, there's the idea that removing an organ, any organ, desecrates the sanctity of the body. Third, there's the interpretation that the religious concept of altruism, or ithar, is about giving away your wealth or possessions, not parts of yourself. And finally, there's this critical legal principle. You can't justify harming one person, even with their consent, just to cure another.
But of course, that's only one side of the coin. A really powerful counter perspective has emerged, and it's actually become the majority view among Islamic legal bodies today. And this view completely shifts the focus from the body as a trust to the absolute, undeniable duty to preserve life. And this, right here, illustrates the core tension perfectly. It's not about just throwing out the principle of bodily sanctity. No way. It's about what happens when two sacred principles come into direct conflict, protecting the body from harm versus the paramount duty to save a life. So, which one takes precedence?
Well, for the majority of scholars, the answer is found in this principle of choosing the lesser of two evils. It's like an ethical balancing act, right? The harm caused by removing an organ from a donor is considered the lesser evil when you weigh it against the certain death of a patient who needs that organ to live. However, and this is a huge however, this permission is not a blank check. It comes with some really strict, non-negotiable conditions, and all four of these have to be met. The transplant must be an absolute last resort. It has to have a very high chance of success. It cannot cause significant long-term harm to the donor. And maybe most importantly, it has to be a pure act of donation. Selling organs is absolutely 100% forbidden.
So we have two really compelling religious arguments. How do modern legal systems navigate this? Well, the entire framework, the whole thing, hinges on one critical legal concept. And that concept is informed consent. In Arabic, it's al-tabsir, which literally means to enlighten. And that's so fitting, because this is about so much more than just signing a form. It's a legal requirement for doctors to make sure the donor, who, remember, is a healthy person taking a risk, fully, truly understands every single possible outcome, the good and the bad. And this right here is the key that unlocks everything. When consent is free, informed, and complete, it ethically reframes the entire act. It's no longer seen as mutilation or a violation of a trust. Instead, it becomes a legally protected and noble act of sacrifice, which aligns perfectly with that principle of saving a life. Now, to see how all this works in practice, let's look at a specific example. Iraq's Organ Transplant Act of 2016. This is where you can see those religious and ethical principles get baked right into clear legal rules. The law draws some very clear lines in the sand. It permits donation, but only as a last resort and with a high probability of success. But it explicitly forbids selling organs, donating organs that are essential for life from a living person, and, this is a really important one, donating reproductive organs. And that's all about preventing the mixing of lineage, which is a major concern in Islamic law. The law is also crystal clear on who can consent. It sets the age of complete capacity at 18. This just underscores the gravity of the decision, right? It requires full legal maturity and the ability to give that deep, informed consent we were just talking about. But what about the most vulnerable among us? Those who actually cannot legally consent for themselves? Well, the law is incredibly protective here, which has led to different countries adopting slightly different approaches to balance that protection with the need to save lives.
And this is where we really see the different legal philosophies at play. Iraq has an absolute prohibition. A guardian simply cannot consent on a child's behalf, period. But then you look at Egypt and France, they've created these very narrow, conditional exceptions for regenerative tissues, things like stem cells or bone marrow, and usually only between immediate family members, all under the strictest judicial and medical oversight you can imagine.
So as we close, we're left with this big question for the future. I mean, with advancements like xenotransplantation and artificial organs on the horizon, how will these foundational principles, the body as a trust, consent is the key, and necessity is the justification, how will they be tested in new and unimaginable ways? Thank you for joining us.